that we have to focus on academic researches. We are sure that it really a fruitful one to all who attended the session. And next we have a brilliant presentation by Dr. T. Abdulaziz, who opened numerous windows towards the academic resource. We have immense pleasure and gratitude towards him for making aware of the authentic e-resources for the research purposes. Today we have the same category of eminent speakers, and let me invite Professor M. Abdurrab, coordinator of IQAC, for welcome speech. Please.
Honorable Chief Guest of the Day, Dr. V.G. Prasad, respected Principal Professor C. Ashraf, our HOD, Professor T. Ibrahim, professors, dear colleges, and dearest participants, a warm good afternoon to all. As we know, we all are present here for refreshing our academic excellence. We are in the second day of the 1 week e-workshop on research in languages and literature. As the time and age has been changing, we have to run as quick as possible to pluck the ripened fruits of efficiency. I am sure that for your research aspirant who set foot in the academic excellence, the moment they spend will never be wasted in life. I am not prolonging my words. Let me move on to my proposed duty. Today, our distinguished chief guest is Dr. Prasad, research guide and the head and associate professor, Department of English, RSM SNDP College, Koilandi. Let me take a few moments to introduce him. Dr. Prasad VG has been a reputed scholar and research guide with more than 30 years of teaching experience at a college level. He has been a resource person in the national and international seminars and has been in the editorial board of reputed journals. His doctoral degree was from Kannur University, won the concept of nation in the works of Shashi Tharoor. He was an instrumental in providing the online teaching experience. His areas of interest includes online teaching, research writing, literary theory, and theater. I am so glad to welcome our honorable guest, Dr. Prasad VG, on behalf of the entire college team. I heartily welcome to you, sir. Next, I would like to welcome our respected principal, Professor C. Ashraf, who is chairing the session. Welcome, sir. Then I am so happy to welcome our beloved HOD, Professor T. Ibrahim, to this webinar. I have immense pleasure to welcome my colleagues and professors from different colleges to this session. And of course, I have a special energy to welcome one and all the participants for this academic fiesta. Once again, I welcome every presenters and participants for gracing our webinar. Thank you, thank you. I invite our principal to chair this session. Thank you, sir.
A very warm good afternoon to all the participants and respected chief guest, Dr. V.G. Prasad. Dear participants, we are in the second day of this 1 week e-workshop on research in languages and literature. Yesterday we had a very wonderful session, very wonderful inaugural session by Dr. M.C. Dilip Kumar, formerly VC, Vice Chancellor of Sri Shankaracharya University, Kaladi, and a very wonderful and informative session by Dr. T.A. Abdulaziz of Calicut University Central Library. Today we have a very eminent guest, a reputed scholar and writer, and a very good model teacher, who is my personal friend, Dr. V.G. Prashant. He will be handling the topic of research writing, which is very, very important as far as a research scholar is concerned. I know that there are several research scholars and research supervisors gathered in this platform to participate in this e-workshop. Dear participants, research is a very brilliant academic activity. And research writing, of course, needs acquisition of all the skills pertaining to that genre. And you see, research writing some 10 years back is quite different from research writing of the present day. With the movement of time, with the passing of time, and with the advent of the digital technology, several changes have come to this field of research writing also. We have an eminent resource person, a reputed scholar, and a very good teacher of 30 years of standing is with us to deal with the topic of research writing today. Dr. V.G. Prashant is in the editorial board of several reputed journals, and he has several publications to his credit. He participates, he presents papers in several national and international seminars and workshops. He is also very interested in the field of literary theory, theater, and research writing. I hope that we will have a wonderful session today from Dr. V.G. Prashant. And let me once again invite all the participants, research scholars and research supervisors of different colleges across our country to be with us at platform with keen interest till the end of this session. Let me once again welcome my dear friend, Dr. V.G. Prashant, to deliver his class on the topic. Sir, please.
Thank you, Ashok sir, for the very kind words you said about me. I wholeheartedly welcome all the participants. We have 132 on board right now, and more are expected. And I also appreciate the etiquette you maintain, except a very few, of course, that is not by intention. They have muted themselves. And of course, you can keep your video live or not. That is your personal decision. Yeah, my presentation will be today on research writing. Especially, I'll be focusing on writing a research paper as well as a synopsis, right from the very beginning to the very end of the activity. My presentation will come now on your screen. Yeah. So I would like to say a few remarks before I actually begin my session. Number one is that 2 years before, I was invited to be part of an editorial team in one of the reputed journals, which was then under the UGC list. Now that particular journal is not in the UGC care list, they are trying to get into. And I was assigned about 30 papers to go through. And when I went to these papers, one thing that struck me at the outset is that so many of the papers or so many of the articles were written by scholars with great spark. But the way in which they have said it, the way in which they have narrated or maybe constructed their paper, it was faulty. We had to almost ask every writer to rewrite the papers and again submit. And some of them were very unacceptable. Of course, a few of them, I would say 5 to 6. But many of them could have been improved. So initially, the first thought that came to me then is that you need to tell your scholars the methodology of writing, because nobody has actually taught any scholar how to write a research paper. Because we all learned, even myself or any other scholar or any other teacher has learned this particular activity of writing through a trial and error method, right? So I think we have a few participants who are not muted. I request all the participants to mute themselves. Otherwise, there will be a great echo in my presentation. That will be a disturbance for me as well as for the entire participants. We have about 150 now. So I request all of you to mute yourself. Video you can either keep or that is up to your personally. So when this particular problem was confronted, I decided that I should address this issue in my personal or maybe a limited circle. And that is how I prepared the first presentation on schematics of research writing. Then it became, I presented it a couple of times in some of the actual seminars. Now only we have come to webinars. Earlier we had, yeah, just 1 second.
Dear participants,
So I would like to.
participants, it would have been very nice of you.
I'll just do. Thank you, Ashraf. I have now I have used my control because this particular platform is a great control. But since this is a meeting of scholars, I never exercise the control. Now I have exercised the control. Now everybody is muted and only my voice will be there. Thank you. So that was the situation then. So what happened was next was this became very popular and I was invited to a number of conferences to present this particular idea. And accidentally, when we were once we were traveling, I was traveling with Ashraf, principal Ashraf sir. So I accidentally mentioned this particular point. So he said, we also would like to have you here in this platform. And I'm very thankful to Ashraf sir for inviting me to this particular program. So let us just look at how you construct. Of course, I may not be sharing this particular presentation, but you are free to take a screenshot at any point of time, right? Any slide you wanted to take, you can take a screenshot. Some of the part of the presentation I can share, no question, but I may not be sharing the entire activity. It has an intellectual property right? Okay, so we move to the presentation now. Yeah. So what do you need to learn when you plan a research paper in construction? I'll just begin from your college assignment, which is the first model that many of the research scholars now who attend this class are familiar with. And I would also like to tell you that in my college days, there were no assignments, right? I never had undertaken the duty of writing an assignment until I think I reached my PG. My first assignment was done as part of my PG project. Then my MPhil, I had a few assignments and projects writing. And only after completing my PhD, I am into this particular writing. But other students of the present, they are actually trained from very beginning on how to write papers. And the PowerPoint presentation also you are trained how to do it. So my point will be what I've written on the right side, how to choose a topic. This is an important area which we'll be addressing in the subsequent slides. How to write a thesis or an introductory statement. And this is a central or integral part of any paper, any synopsis. So the research thesis statement is very, very important as far as we are concerned. So we need to pay some attention to the argument of the paper, which we call a thesis statement when it comes to a synopsis. understand the difference between plagiarism. This is a very important area, as all of you know. There is an acceptable plagiarism because you can quote a writer with inverted comma, and you can also quote a writer in your own language, but there is some method into it. So I'll be also addressing that part towards the end of the presentation. And how to use parenthetical notation, how to quote a particular text, and what are the methods of quoting. I mean, what I mean is the in-text quoting your quoting something within your text itself or within your paper itself, and also works cited and formatting a paper. That completes the presentation today. And to make a beginning with, I would like to say that research is a very significant word with a French origin, which etymologically mean searcher. Any researcher is a seeker. He looks into something very deep again and again. So that is why it is called, it has a prefix called re, which means he does it, or he or she does it again and again. It is identified, or it can be popularly understood as an intensive search with a purpose of becoming certain. You have an hypothesis in the beginning, which you argue with a introduction, body, conclusion pattern, then come to a kind of a conclusion. And this hypothesis either becomes proven or maybe disproved. Either way, you can argue that Macbeth is a tragedy, and also you can argue it is not a tragedy. So it is up to what kind of arguments you make. So that is the conclusion you make towards the end of it. And it is also a systematic investigation into reality. Maybe if you're undertaking some other kind of a study with related to science or other activities, you may look into a reality or a fact that everybody know. So initially, we'll straight away begin the discussion with the structure of the paper. And this is the structure of a paper, a research paper or a synopsis. There are slight difference between a research paper and a synopsis, which I'll be pointing at when I describe the content. There should be an abstract. Abstract itself is a very small paper. I'll be paying attention separately to the abstract. Normally, abstracts are about 100 to 200 words. Normally, depends upon the agency that is conducting the program, or maybe the journal that is inviting article. It can be 100 words to 200 words. And very unusually, people go for a 300 or 350 word abstract. Normally, it is a single paragraph. Normally, it should also, after the abstract, you should have a keywords. 4 to 5 keywords should be there along with every abstract. Along with that, you can also have your own name, designation, address, email ID, etc., and also a title. This is the abstract. I'll be showing examples. Then you should have an introduction. In this introduction, usually abstracts are a single paragraph. You can also have split into 2 paragraphs if you are permitted to write more than 300 words or maybe more than 200 words abstract. You are free to split into 2 paragraphs. Normally, we make it a single paragraph. And there is something very important in this particular introduction of abstract, that there should be a thesis statement. And you need to exactly tell what is your argument in this particular paper. That is called thesis statement. Or if it is a synopsis, you need to tell what you are going to study, focus on in your research thesis. So a research statement becomes very, very important. If it is in an abstract, it can run up to maybe 2 or maximum 3 sentences. If it is a synopsis, it can run up to maybe a paragraph. And in a thesis, this particular thesis statement can be maybe 1 or 2 page lengthy. And there is a literature review. At times, people put literature review after methodology, but there is no hard and fast rule. You can either put it before or after. Literature review takes a stock of all that is available right now. Your area of study, what are the studies actually happened in this particular area, what are the books you have come across dealing with this particular area, or either marginally or maybe absolutely. Then you need to tell what is the methodology, what kind of a study you are going to undertake. Is it a theory based, Is it some other pattern? Is it a theoretical analysis? Is it a close reading? That you have to make very sure what it is. Is it based on a particular theory? Then you have to explain what the theory is and how are we going to apply this theory into this. If it is a thematic analysis, you have to say which is the method you are adopting. Is it a close reading, structuralism, or whatever. And also results. And what is the result of your initial lecture available on this area, and what is the outcome you have found, and what is the relevance of your paper or your research in this particular area. Suppose you have a post-colonial study of a particular writer published by 3 different writers. 3 books are available, already come out in this particular area. Now you have to tell what exactly you have a role, what exactly is your role in writing a 4th book, or maybe writing a 4th attempt on this particular same writer. So there should be some relevance in your perspective. So you just put it that 3 people have said in this particular manner, and I'm going to have a different version of that. So that is my relevance. Discussion, of course, discussion is analysis. The remaining part of a paper should go to discussion, and you devote your time for discussion, right? It can be into few paragraphs. Maybe if the length of the paper, usually it is restricted within 4,000 words normally. But in outside India, in abroad, when you go to other foreign countries for paper presentation, some of them demand a kind of a 8,000 word limit, right? It depends on the agency that is running the program or the journal that is inviting the article. Normally, a research paper consists of 4,000 words normally. And of course, conclusion is very important, but conclusion can be done in a very short paragraph running up to maybe 3 to 5 sentences. You don't actually write a very long conclusion sentence. Either it can be a separate paragraph, or you can integrate that into the last paragraph of your argument. Then comes works cited, very important, because I'll exactly tell you or maybe show you what are the very important points you have to bear in mind while writing the works cited. And then appendix. Appendix, as you said, appendix is a singular, appendicitis is a plural. So appendix, not very normal now in language papers, but if you think that some of the, if you're studying, for example, if your focus of study is about the time of maybe something like Kunyali Marekar, or you are trying to read a intertextual reading of Chandu Menon's Indulega with some other English text or any other. And if you feel that one particular point or maybe a document is to be documented in your essay or in your research paper, you can use that as a appendix. No question about that. But nowadays, I don't think there are many papers which make use of appendixes. And naturally, that is just a format that I've just mentioned. When you come to the next slide, we look at the structure one by one. Abstract, I have already explained, but I'll be just reading that through again. Abstract briefly introduces the context, the argument of the paper, the concept that you are planning to implement, the methodology, and your finding, result, along with 5 keywords that you have used in this particular abstract. So an abstract running up to 200 lines, roughly 200 words, with 5 keywords. And naturally, in an abstract, you have a general introduction to your topic, thesis statement or major argument in your paper, and also a peeping into or maybe just a outline of the literature review and the statement of methodology. So together, this will constitute a interesting abstract. Yeah, somebody is trying to. Yeah. So the second point is introduction and thesis statement. 2 participants raise the hand. Can you just check what it is. Yeah. Anas and Jafar have raised the hands. You can use chat for the time being. I'll open and give you time at the end of the presentation for your interaction, right? So in abstract, this is the format of an abstract. Then when you come to introduction and thesis statement, this is a clear overall purpose of the study. That is the introduction. Introduction would place introduction would place where you actually, what exactly you wanted to describe, what you wanted, what is your paper is all about, and you begin normally with a very general kind of an introduction, unless and until your paper has any special, is on a very specialized subject, then you need not have a general introduction. So normally the overall idea, overall purpose of your paper is, suppose you are taking a post-colonial study or a feminist study on a particular author, you just describe why this particular study is relevant in this particular paper. You make a very comprehensive idea or a very generalized idea about post-colonial studies or literature or criticism or feminist writing or feminist criticism, and you naturally make a transition to your argument. And then you have a research question, or maybe I would say thesis statement. That is what question you are planning to take it up, and provide a very brief background to this author or this concept. Suppose you are making a psychoanalytical approach, you just mention what it is and how you are going to do, and how this particular author or a text fits into this particular category. That is called a introduction, a thesis statement. Then you have a literature review, which is very, very important, because that actually places you where you stand with respect to the knowledge that is available in this particular realm. It summarizes the conclusions that have been already pointed out, already reached by other researchers. Suppose you quote a book saying that this particular book argues in this particular fashion, meaning that particular writer has argued in a particular fashion and made a conclusion. And you quote this particular book to say that you differ from this particular argument or this particular notion in this particular way. Yeah, I think few people are raising the hands. I just don't understand why. Is it so urgent? Can you use the chat? Is it by mistake? I suppose. I think people raise their hand by mistake. Okay. So this is literature review. Then to highlight the main points and the controversies around the problem. So suppose you are making, there are a number of different kinds of paper writing, as you know. Some may be a analysis of some particular idea. Some may be application of a particular idea or a theory. Some may be a kind of a debate, right? You can argue that this particular text does not belong to this particular category, or it does not state exactly what it conveys actually. For example, there are a number of books, it's available. A novel on partition, Bhishma Sahini's Tamas, for example. Train to Pakistan, Khushwant Singh. So you can take this up and argue that this particular book does not have anything to do with partition. If at all, you can argue like that. Or you can say that Khushwant Singh actually makes a caricature of this particular partition, which is otherwise a very serious activity, right? So it can happen in all different ways, right? So it can either be a highlight of an issue, or you can even take up controversies, arguments, and you can take one side and maybe you can argue against. All this can be done in a literature review, because you have a starting point in your abstract, and you are supported by the arguments that are already available by this literature review. Can you go to the next slide? Methodology. And what is most important in a research paper is the methodology after thesis statement, right? Thesis statement is the most important thing. Methodology is very important. You exactly mentioned in the abstract itself that what is your methodology? What is your research method? That has to be made very obvious. And you need to explain and justify the analysis or methodology by giving sufficient points to support that. And if you are doing a data analysis, because though it is not very common in English literature, I think in English, teaching of English literature, English language teaching, that ELT area, I think they undertake papers, or maybe they attempt papers on based on a data analysis, right? So for if you're doing your paper on that area, your data should be supportive to your argument, right? But in commerce and other branches of knowledge learning, you have this data-based analysis. And result, what is the finding of your, what is your conclusion? What is your finding? How you find this particular? You can, perhaps you argue that Macbeth is not a comedy. It's a romance. I'm just giving an example. It's not something that I'm very serious about. So if you argue it like that, you have to make a point that it is not a tragedy but a romance. So how you make this particular argument based on a methodology. So this is the result of your finding. And then we come to discussion. Discussion is a major area, or maybe I would say the area that occupies maximum space. When you discuss, you take up each and every point, discuss it at length, split into paragraphs, and argue thoroughly by making use of review of literature on one hand, your thesis statement on the other hand, and your arguments lead you to a kind of a conclusion which you wanted to make. Then once you discussion is over, you make a conclusion. And in the conclusion, we also mention that further research is, if at all you feel that further research is needed in this particular area, you need to mention that my point, my argument is only a starting point. There should be further focus to be put in by other scholars in this particular area where you can perhaps continue with your research. And works cited, so there is a mistake on works cited, it is cited actually. It's a list of alphabetically arranged reference material. And earlier, when I was doing I began my PhD, we were using the term bibliography. But by the time I presented my thesis, we were using the term works cited. The major difference between bibliography and works cited is that works cited includes only the works that are cited in the paper or the thesis. You cannot write or bring in any book that has not been quoted by you, the researcher, in this particular paper. So it should be alphabetically arranged. And just one word I would like to mention before I move further is that all the research papers, research scholars, I would just like to remind you that this is an area where you waste maximum of your time, because you might very often forget the details of pagination, details of publisher, year, etc. You miss very often the bibliographical details, and you have to search for days and days to find which is the source that you actually wanted to, that you have actually cited. So my advice to you, all the young scholars, is that the moment you quote something from any source, just start writing the works cited. So the moment you start writing a research paper or a synopsis or even a research thesis, the moment a text, immediately you should also add that particular person in your bibliography. Because towards the end, especially in web sources, you may not even find this web source after maybe a year or two, or even after 6 months. So it is very important that you quote and immediately write down or immediately prepare a works cited as soon as you begin the paper or a research thesis. Then you move to appendix. So again, I told you appendix is not something very common in the English language. The present relevant details, you think you wanted to have something extra, you wanted to have a document, you wanted to have a movie referred to, or you want to add a photograph, that all can be a document which can be done as an appendix, right? Or any historical evidence, whatever can be added at the end. So once the paper is over, after the bibliography, you can add appendix. If there are more, you have to add the appendices. Then we come to the most important aspect of how you should write the paper. Now, we are elaborating. Abstract. Abstract, as we told earlier, it's a summary of a body of information. It expresses the main claim and argument of a paper. That is what I've already discussed with you. Now, what is the questions that an abstract answers? Number one, why did you do this study or a project? What is the logic behind this paper? What is the logic behind this particular writing? What did you do and how? How and why? What did you find? What is your finding, argument? What is the relevance of your finding? These are the four. If the four questions are answered after reading your abstract, it is accepted. And I would also like to tell the young scholars that the moment you come across an invitation for a seminar or a paper presentation, you will be asked to give a or submit an abstract. And abstract is the first thing that normally reaches an editor like me. And I'll be given maybe 100 abstracts and asked to pick the important or maybe worthy abstracts among 30, 40 I need to pick, or maybe less than that, out of 100 or 150. So what I do normally, I just start reading the abstract. Reading an abstract will take hardly 5 minutes. And also I look at the keywords. Abstract, as you understand, may not have a bibliography or a word site. So when I go through the abstract, what strikes me is that how well you have made your point, especially the argument of the paper. And normally in English, we specifically write that this paper intends to bring out or study, or the very purpose of the paper is, I mean, you have to use this particular expression. So that indicates that you are writing the most important aspect, that is the research statement or maybe paper statement in your abstract. So that is an area I first pay attention to. Then I'll just see whether you have argued your idea is very, very clear, whether you wanted to give or an answer to or write a paper on a particular area which is relevant, or does it may hold any water. Then I'll also look at the introductory part, how we have introduced the concept and how you are argued, how you made a transition from this introduction to your own paper presentation or your own paper statement or thesis statement that you are going to make, or maybe the statement of your argument, in the sense that you're make how well you are made your argument. And also I pay attention to the methodology that you plan to apply to this particular paper. And finally, I'll also have a glance at the keywords, and I'll see whether these keywords make any sense in a with respect to this particular seminar. Maybe every seminar has a topic, and they also have a thrust area, and I'll just see whether this conforms to the thrust area of the seminar. Then only we accept this particular paper. So when you think from my point of view, or when you think from the other side of the lens, what you understand is that if there are these things mentioned properly, you have a very clear-cut idea about the argument, you have incorporated methodology, your literature review is mentioned, right? You cannot detail that at this point. That will be detailed only in the paper. And you have given a good sound introduction and also keywords. These are the 5 areas I pay attention to when I get an abstract. This is how any person, any editor would pay attention to when they get a paper. Now, how do you write an introduction to abstract? This is also true to writing an introduction to paper as well, right? In abstract, introduction may consist about 3 to 4 sentences maximum, 3 to 4 sentences. But in a paper, research paper, it may be up to a paragraph or a page. And in the research project or research thesis, introduction may consist of maybe 5 to 10 pages, right? Yeah. There are new entries. Yeah. Now, sorry, I'm making you mute again. So the primary purpose of the introduction is to frame the paper for the readers. And this is what I call the introduction. So you need to introduce. See, you have to take it for granted that the person who is going to read your paper is absolutely ignorant. Maybe he is good at, or maybe he is well versed, or he or she is well versed. Maybe he or she is a great scholar. That is true. But you have to begin with the intention that what you are going to write should make sense to even a person who has no idea about this particular research area. So your introduction must be adequate enough to give the reader or maybe the reviewer an idea about what you're going to write actually. So it should be a brief, I just provide you a model, right? You can make your own liberties with it. There is no hard and fast rule that they should be constructed in this manner alone, but I'm just providing you a model, that's all. Brief description, brief description of the topic statement. Yeah, is there any? Yeah, you can use your chat box if you have any. Maybe is there audio issue? No. Is there any audio issue? Anybody? No, I don't find any. Yeah. So I think I'll let me continue. Uh, is there any audio issue right now?
No, no, sir.
Yeah. No, sir. I can just continue, I suppose, right? Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. So let me continue. See, after the brief description, why the topic is worth researching and why and what has made you interested in this particular topic. Interested is a funny word I use, meaning you very often you write a paper because of a dire need. You might write a paper after completing your PhD, you write papers for the fun of it. But during your PhD, you write a paper out of dire need. So what I am trying to argue is that you should make your paper, especially the argument of the paper, so appealing. Then only it gets accepted. The statement of the research objective should be very clear. Statement of the method and the scope of study, which is all you integrate into 400 words maximum, 200 words maximum. So within this 200 word span, you need to discuss in your abstract all these again and again. And it should be so milkmaid, something like a milkmaid. What your abstract should be readable. Transition should be made very smooth from the general idea to the particular, and an overview of the abstract part of it should be so smooth that you begin with a introduction, general idea, then come to the particular of your own research author or research text, then provide your argument and include literature review, what is already etc. And then you can perhaps think of a research statement or maybe the argument of the paper. Along with that, methodology should be mentioned. And finally, you make a conclusion, right? Yeah. You can all, you're free to ask any question at the end of the presentation. Okay. Now, next is literature review. When you make a literature review, 4 questions. This literature review should be elaborated in the paper. In the abstract, you just mentioned that find some one or two books which are very interesting. Now, 4 guide questions. What is the present state of knowledge regarding this topic under discussion? That is the first major point we need to discuss, right? What is the purpose of this particular paper? What is the present state of knowledge with respect to this particular paper or this particular argument? How are the studies related to the one being proposed? So I am planning to undertake a post-colonial analysis of a writer like Shashi Deshpande or maybe Shashi Tharoor or maybe Vikram Seth. And why my study becomes different from the other studies on the same topic? What is the quality of the studies reviewed? Did I take a significant work? Is the work I have considered for literature review standard books as without a special mention? You need to take up a book which is of a quality product naturally. And how will the proposed study contribute to the existing literature? How this particular work is going to propose to the literature of today? This will be the 4 questions that are relevant to literature review. We'll be summing up at the end. Again, I'll be mentioning this once again. Now, methodology. When you come to methodology, it is demonstrated that you are aware of the research methods. Suppose you are applying a post-colonial study or a feminist study or a eco-critical study or even a study, any theoretical study you're making. So you should mention what is the theory in a nutshell and how this theory is going to be applied in our particular paper or a research work to justify the method and approach you have taken in this particular study. So you need to take why you have taken this particular analysis. For example, when Catherine Spurgeon made the first study on imagery of Shakespeare's plays, she has taken Hamlet as an example. So Hamlet proved to be the right kind of a tool for Spurgeon to analyze. Then when later Richard Clement, when he came up with the same kind of an analysis. So, but when you can apply a structuralist method or a post-structuralist method, a deconstructive approach, any approach you can take. But you have to mention specifically why you have taken this particular area or this particular theory to analyze this particular. Why you have taken this tool to unlock. Why you have taken this key to unlock the lock. Right? This is the idea I'm trying to tell you when I say methodology. To explain, justify method of data collection and analysis. When you use a data analysis, you have to come up with certain tools with which you analyze a data. Right? So statistical tools, there are a number of tools available. I'm not well versed in statistical tools because that was not my area of study. But I've come across, I've read some of the theses. Even in commerce, I proofread some of the theses in commerce for my friends, my colleagues rather. So I've come across these terms and I'm familiar with that, that's all. So if you are applying an analytical data analysis, then you need to explain why this tool is being used. Then conclusion. The result of conclusion should be focused on this part to sum up your findings. What is the significance of the outcome? The implication or recommendations that is indicated by you, your study. So now I would like to categorize different things differently. 1, if you are writing an abstract, all this should come in a single paragraph or maximum 2 paragraphs. Meaning you need to give a 2 to 3 sentence introduction, 2 sentences for research statement of the paper, argument of the paper. Maybe another 2 sentences or 3 sentences for literature review, another 2 to 3 sentences on methodology, maybe 1 or 2 sentences on conclusion. So this is the structure of an abstract. If you are writing a research paper running up to 4,000 words, paragraphs maximum, maybe your literature review or maybe beginning of your argument can go up to 1 or 2 pages. That is, you have to fix your context. Then your research state or maybe the argument of the paper, 1 paragraph or maybe part of a paragraph. Then literature review, it should go about 1 or 2 pages. Then your argument. Naturally, followed by a conclusion. The same analogy can be applied to a research thesis as well. When you have a research thesis, that is a longest available activity that we undertake. Normally, in a research thesis, you should have 270 to 350 pages normally, right? So you normally divide a research thesis into chapters. I say normally very specifically because there is no hard and fast rule. You are very fine. You can very well make it into 6 chapters or maybe 7 chapters. And there is also no hard and fast rule understanding that we make. I've come across research thesis running up to 800 pages. And also there are research thesis pages. But that all depends on your guide and your university to which you are affiliated. Normally it is between 270 to 350 normally. 300, around 300 is the norm, unless your university or a guide specifies something different. So when you write a thesis, the same analogy can be applied. You need to have an introductory chapter running up to maybe 20, 25 pages normally. Then chapters 2, 3, 4 to maybe 40. Less up to 40 or 25 pages works cited column. So this is the idea in which you apply to a thesis. So I would like you to make a distinction between an abstract, a research paper, and also a thesis. Then in between, there is also another thing for young aspirants who are planning to undertake research. You have to give a research proposal. And when you give a research proposal, again, you have to focus on. And a research proposal, again, it does not have a hard and fast rule pattern. It is always ask your guide to give you a model of a synopsis method by his or her last candidate. So take up all the headings. It may have a headings like right, something like that. So every university has its own pattern. Again, you have to apply the same formality. There should be introduction. There should be a literature, literature. There should be a methodology area. And this is the same area, same pattern you have to follow everywhere. Only the length matters. Abstract is the shortest. Maybe research thesis is a. So you just apply the same kind of a theory everywhere with most changes that is appropriate to different kind of writing. And the conclusion, as I said you earlier, conclusion or a result, right? You have a big maiden hypothesis, and what is the outcome of that? After a careful analysis, the end by saying that this is your finding of your methodology for coming to the end. And if further discussion is needed, of course, in a research thesis, you cannot have further discussion is needed in this particular area, you cannot say. But all other aspects in a paper or a synopsis, you can always say that there is scope for further research, which can be undertaken by anybody. Works cited. And this is one area which I call scientific. Even a literature thesis or a paper, this area should be very scientific. So you have to categorize, display your sources, whether it is print, web, music, video, whatever, in a particular pattern that has been specified by MLA. MLA is the version that we normally literature language people use. And there is also another style called APA, which is used by science. And there are also other styles like Chicago, Oxford, which I think reference to the university article. Cited works should be in alphabetical order. There should be a referencing as well, which we'll be looking at in detail later. Now, coming to appendix. this is what I have said it in advance. Any document you find relevant that has helped you in your study, and any material you is essential in understanding your paper. Suppose I am writing a paper on Kathakali, which is a traditional art form of Kerala, or Autumn Thullal, another traditional art form of Kerala, or even something like a Teyyam, which many of you may not even heard from people from outside Kerala, I would say. So, however hard I try to describe you what Teyyam is, it is always better that I provide a photograph or a video link to provide an idea of what this Teyyam is to a non-native reader, to a non-native evaluator. So in that case, I can include a video link or a photograph or a book, whatever is available as an appendix. Normally, otherwise, of course, if I am writing a paper on Gabriela Garcia Marquez, Love in Time of Cholera, I need not attach that as a PDF because everybody has an idea about what the novel is all about, and majority of the people might have read that aspect. So that is. Now we come to the next point. See, for the who already registered for the PhD, I have just a word for. See, when you are in the midst of your PhD, this is the situation you are in. You find different ways ahead of you. You don't know which way to turn. And there are so many distractions for you from your research. And that is the most kind of a time, difficult kind of a time, or confusing kind of a time, where you always regret that you have started. And I know that it is a very difficult bridge to cross while you cross it actually. After you cross the bridge, after the PhD is awarded to you, when you look back to it, you don't find it as you have done something very great. You find it very simple. And you can always tell your students, if at all you have a research students later, it is something very easy. But during the time of research, it was a very difficult job. But once you finish it, it may appear to you as something easy. And this is the kind of a confusion or a dilemma that a research scholar is in when you wanted to make a beginning. See, the very problem even I confronted when I doing my research, because we both, myself and my wife, did research together. So we were actually supporting each other in writing the thesis. I mean, we were doing the PhD in the same university under the same guide, but on a different topic. I was doing a fiction and she was doing a drama. And the basic issue I confronted was where to begin and how to begin. See, one day I wanted to start my research writing, or maybe I wanted to do my research thesis, and I sat in front of my computer. A new Word file is taken, and I wanted to type my thesis. That day, I think I sat around 9 o'clock in the morning, and until 2 o'clock, I could not write a single line. I wrote so many lines, but I was not happy with that. And I think I remember after 3 o'clock or maybe 3:30, I wrote the first sentence. And that was a very, very ordinary sentence. I never liked it. So this is a one big question that you very often come across when you take your project writing, or maybe your synopsis, or even a research paper, or even an abstract. So what my advice to you is that you just begin something in whatever fashion you like. See, the sentence I wrote at 3:30 in the evening was a very ordinary sentence, which I could have very well written at 9 o'clock in the morning. But at 9 o'clock, I thought that I could perhaps bring out a sentence that nobody has written. That was my idea. And by 3:30, I was very sure I can only write what others have already written. There is nothing new or bombastic that I can write. So I made compromises and I started writing. And once I started writing, things came. And then I rewrote. I mean, as everybody understands, I have rewritten my earlier stuff after consulting with my guide. My point is, you have to make a beginning. It doesn't matter whether it is ordinary or something ecstatic. So you just make a beginning, that's all. Now, one tip for those who have not chosen. If you are writing a paper, if you are writing an article, choose something that interests you, especially PhD. If you are planning a PhD, remember that you are going to sleep with this person, you are going to live with this person for about 3 to 4 years. And Shakespeare is great when he said familiarity breeds contempt. So there will be a time during your research writing or maybe your thesis writing, you just get fed up with everything. You wanted to throw away and burn the books like Virgil, and then run away from the entire activity. So what makes you cling to, what makes you stick to this particular author or this particular thesis or this particular writing is your love of it. You like it so much. So my advice is that accept an author, choose an author who is of great interest to you, who has a great passion. You have a great passion for this particular writing, this particular area, right? Only then you can bring up with something wonderful. Let your thesis, let your abstract, let your research paper need not be small, right? For example, a research paper you can only argue a very small point. I mean, very you cannot have a very elaborate study. For example, the thematic analysis of Mahabharata. It cannot be done in a paper. It can be done in a thesis, not in a paper. Because Mahabharata is so vast and wide, you cannot apply everything to a small paper. Or even you cannot say the vision of Dostoevsky cannot be done to a single paper. You can do it, there is no issue, but you cannot discuss each and every of his writing. Vaikom Mohammad Bashir, I think cannot be summarized. He's a very noted writer in Malayalam who could have actually won a Nobel Prize if he had been living in another country and writing in English. So he cannot be summarized into the, of course, for research, definitely. So let your paper be on a topic which is neither too broad and neither too narrow. You are applying a particular idea too deep into that. Again, that seems to be difficult to establish. That's my argument. But if you are very good at it, if you are very confident, you can definitely go for a broad topic and also a difficult topic. I'm just giving this as an idea for an ordinary person, right? If you are very extraordinary, if you are very bent on giving a subtle analysis of a work, you are always welcome. And of course, plan everything from an average point of view, normally. That's a general tip I provide. Then this is only for the beginners. Experienced people can just ignore this slide. You have to have a great observation, right? If you go to a library, I think many of my participants who are actually listening to me today have this experience. Maybe first time when I went to ASRC. ASRC was the great library in those days. Now it is part of Osmania University campus Hyderabad. American Study Center Library, which had about 2 lakhs plus books. And I remember still even now when I was doing my MPhil, I went there for a material collection. And I took almost a day to understand how to locate a book. So this is something very important. And a library may have maybe 20 books which are relevant to your research. How do you actually read these 20 books in maybe limited time? You may have 5 or 6 days. So this is something very important and you need to understand about it. And now you have PDF, what you call a PDF, you are living in a PDF era where everything comes to you in a PDF form. But when I was doing my research or my studies, the photostat itself was very expensive. I was not so rich enough to take photostat copies. Now we can do it. And in those days, university libraries may not allow you to take photocopies for more than 10 pages. There was a restriction like that. I don't know why. Some universities, I think they still maintain this particular restriction. Then, if the author is alive, you have all the privilege to be holding an interview. I met Shashi Tharoor a couple of times for two different interviews. One I did for a magazine and another one for my own research. And you should know how to use a library. That's also very important. And how to take down notes, how to take down, because explaining this will take a longer time. So I'm just skipping this, how to take notes and how to read in a library. Just one tip I would like to give you is that you collect books in the library, look at the index card and select which are the books. Go to the final pages where you have index and see whether any of the books contain information relevant to your study, and take out those pages and read that. And just by reading 2 to 3 pages, you will understand whether the book is worth for you. Then if it is good, go to the introduction, read the introduction and the chapter that is relevant for your study, if this book has only that. Or if you feel that your book is the complete book is of great use to you, then you read the full book. But I may not recommend reading the full book in a library where when you make a visit to a particular place, right? So you can either photocopy it or maybe order a book from any of the online websites like Amazon and own it. If you, and my request to all of the participants is that if you are writing a research thesis on a particular author or a particular series of authors or maybe series of books, primary copies you should own, and major secondary source also you can own. Because if you're using, make marks on it. Because every point of time, even when I was writing my thesis, I have a quote in my mind. I know exactly this quote is from this particular book, but I'm not able to trace. I had to read the same book again and again, maybe 3 or 4 times to locate one particular quotation, which I found so integral to my research. So I wasted a lot of time. So normally people waste a lot of time doing research because they don't know how to go about it. And there is no training I received when I was doing my PhD. So that is why I wanted to give some kind of tips to those who actually begin the research. Yes, recently. And this is something very simple how you have to write. This is a kind of an essay writing, which you are all familiar with. When you write an essay, what do is that you have a main idea and 2 subordinate ideas or subsidiary ideas, and that is again subdivided into points. This is something similar to a note making, which you and I studied in the +2 level or maybe undergraduate level. So this is the way in which you can write the thesis and also a research paper. You note down what is the main idea and how you split the main idea into 5 or 6 points and what are the sub points of these 6 different ideas, and make the transition very smooth between from one idea to another. And this is exactly how do you do. I've just copied an idea from writing an essay. This is exactly the way in which you write an essay in the university. Question answer. Have ideas and topics. Begin with the overall survey. Important questions you address. Jot down what seems to be. This is something very simple, I think, which all of you are quite aware of, right? Now, how do you make a parenthetical citation? That is my next idea. We now use the MLA 8th edition, as all of you are familiar with that, I suppose. MLA 8th edition is what we now make use of, and I'll be coming to that particular edition and the differences between 7th and 8th edition towards the end of the presentation. Now, keep the quotes short. This is a very general statement. If the quotes are very long, there is nothing wrong. But you make it a point that you quote only for the actual assistance. You don't quote for the sake of quoting. And if your quote is not running more than 4 typed lines, you can integrate your quote in the text itself. And if the quote runs exceeds 4 typing lines or 4 typed lines, then you have to indent. I'll come to that later. What is an indent? And information, whatever you have quoted in your text, whether it is an abstract or it's a research paper, or a synopsis, or even a research thesis, it should be cited in the works cited. So one of the basic tests that we do when we go for PG dissertation viva or maybe a degree project viva is that we just turn a page number 13, and we might find a code there. And immediately we go to the works cited page and check whether this particular author is given in this works cited area. This is a very simple test that everybody do. So this is very important with respect to quoting a text. But the moment you quote, remember to add this writer, this particular author in your bibliography, or what do you now call works cited. You don't need to cite information that is common knowledge. All that glitters is not say Shakespeare as you like it, page number this and that. No, because all that is all's well that ends well, or all that glitters is not gold. It's a very common quote. You need not cite that because it is so too common, right? Something like that. Then here the area where plagiarism. So paper from a source, and the source it supports your point. So why do you quote? A very simple question. Why do you quote? You quote to support your argument. You quote to substantiate your argument. You quote to give there is what you call a proposer and a seconder to second your argument. When you submit your nomination for election, there is a proposer and a seconder. So for the sake of a seconder, you give a quote. At times you quote just because you wanted to make the reader or maybe the reviewer or whoever reads your paper understand that what was the exact quote given by the user. The language of that person who you actually use the words can never be duplicated by your own language. When I feel that Tharoor's language I cannot imitate, in my own writing, I quote Tharoor. For you to feel what this genuine quote is all about. That is also an example. To present a position or argument, to understand how significant he or she, the writer is the user of language, and a well-stated passage, give an idea about what kind of language he is using and how especially when you are writing a paper on a poetry, very often we need to quote because prose cannot substitute the language of poetry. So you quote for the sake of quoting it. Now, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is actually
Ask the
plagiarism
question.
is actually
Satya is ready, Ra.
stealing somebody else's idea. And stealing is one mistake or one crime. And number two, bigger crime is you are making it as your own. So there are two crimes involved. One, you copy somebody unauthorized way. Then you pretend that this is yours, right? So I can write a wasteland, for example. Just erase T.S. Eliot and write my name. But since this poem is so well known, everybody will find out. If this particular poem is not so well known, I can just pass. So that is what you understand by plagiarism. For passing someone else's work as your own, whether we do this deliberately or not, whether it is deliberate or not. See, at times you say that I never knew that this was there. That is not an excuse. For example, you can quote a writer and acknowledge. There is nothing wrong in that. Any writer can be quoted. Any source can be quoted, any text can be quoted with proper acknowledgement. That is not plagiarism. You are quoting some text, you are giving credit to that particular person who has actually composed it. Not acknowledging when using information, data, graphic, figures. For example, we come across very often, even when, see, I wanted to write a welcome image, welcome poster. I just go to Google, search welcome posters, I copy one and paste it on my presentation. That is what usually we do. Even I do that. We never acknowledge. But because this is a presentation, it doesn't matter because I don't claim any property rights to my presentation normally, right? Normally, because those at times I do that. Normally, I don't do that. Once I make a presentation, I'll make it available for everybody, except research writing, because which I think is little precious. Then maybe you have a data or a figure or a graphic which is copyrighted. I'm violating the copyright by using it as my own. But if I say that I've taken this, I have copied this from a source, when I acknowledge the source, it becomes acceptable because I have quoted it legitimately by the source. Adequately paraphrasing a source, that is also plagiarism. You have somebody who say, for example, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. I'm just using. When I reached a particular point, I found the woods were very lovely, dark and deep, but I know that I have promises, and I also know that I have miles to go before sleep. This is exactly plagiarism because I've changed the original context. I've used the context as my own, and it sounds very interesting and also to what do you say rhetoric, because I'm actually quoting the exact lines of Frost. So this is what you understand, right? I'll be giving you example as well, right? And when you go to the next slide, you have an example. This is an example cartoon level presentation. You are stealing somebody else's idea as your own, right? And the moment you start to plagiarize, there are plenty to be plagiarized because there are plenty of articles, there are plenty of journals available. You can quote and write anything you like, which will not be naturally accepted. Now you will look at the example. Now I'm going to take little time off, and you can just read the two and understand what is a plagiarism and what is a non-plagiarized paraphrase. It's about Japan's Mount Fuji. Those who would like to have a look at later can screenshot and have a look at it. See how this particular quote has been paraphrased in a non-plagiarized manner. This is acceptable, but there is a risk in that. Hope I need not read that because you are maybe too good at reading, better than me, right? This is one example. Another example, direct quote, and see how this direct quote has been non-plagiarized. You are walking on a very tight situation actually, and certain softwares might get hold of you. Now, I think by standard, journalists will not accept if you have more than 15%. Now they have reduced to 12%. So anything over 10 will put you into trouble. So this is one way of translating or transcreating non-plagiarized paraphrase version. Definitely, you can also write that. You can quote this particular words of this writer and acknowledge acknowledge the credit to him or her, and then write. It's also acceptable. Now, I tile should have a pattern of your own, but our pattern for the time being is MLA. We have been consistent writing papers. Now, make a standard format as patient. accept the tradition, you try to follow the latest trend. Now formatting. These are the formats available. And on the other hand, right side I have written APA. APA is more for the science students and the science scholars, etc. And I'm not very well versed in APA format because I never written an article on APA. So my explanation would go the left side, that is on MLA. I've just brought in APA just to make a distinction. In case there are any science students into this, economics or maybe the PA format. Font size, as you understand, it's A4 and margin. This is all very important. The moment I get a paper from you, first thing that strikes me is the format. You have to leave 1-inch margin on all sides. But if you are typing a research, you may 1.25 on the left side because the binding is going to come on that. So binding will some part of the paper. Otherwise, normally when you're writing and making an electronic presentation, you leave 1-page margin on all sides. And the standard font is Times New Roman. Please don't type in any other font. Don't type any other font because some of them would insist. If it is not insisted, it is by default Times New Roman. And 12 is a point you have to write your entire paper, except the title. Title can be in font. And spacing. This is a major change that has happened. Double spacing throughout, including works cited. That is the new method. And flush left alignment. Right should be open. This is also very important. Don't justify. Don't put a border to your writing. So referring to MLA form only for languages. Then paragraph. If you begin a paragraph, 5 spaces, but it's half an inch. You have to leave 5 spaces to begin a paragraph. If you are intending something, it is 1 inch, meaning 10 spaces. I'll be giving examples later. End of a sentence, after a punctuation, leave 1 space. 1 space must be left after every punctuation, including full stop or period. Page numbers, upper right margin, half from the flush to the right margin on top. All page numbers must appear on top. There are slight difference between journals. Some of them wouldn't mind if you put the page number on bottom line as well. But majority of the journals prefer the page number to be posted on the right side of the top margin normally. Unless it is specified, you do this. If there is a specified instruction, you follow that according to the paper and according to the university and also the guide you are working with. Title page. When you're writing a synopsis or an abstract, title first, then on the right side, or maybe left, whatever, there is no hard and fast rule on that. Your name, your designation, your affiliate college, or maybe the institution you're affiliated to, your email ID, and if necessary, phone numbers. Phone number is not actually necessary. If you are willing to give, it's fine. And also date. And then you abstract first with keywords. So that is the first part of it. You send this to the publisher or maybe seminar, conference, the person who coordinates the conference, and he or she will send it in turn to editors. So we will just have a look at it and say that not acceptable, and the reason also will cite a message that you're. But don't worry, don't lose heart. Initially, after 1 or 2 rejection, every paper will be accepted. Underly that you do whatever is the remaining part of it, right? Section headings, tables, illustrations. Literature papers normally don't have many of the illustration tables. All other language We have the table label and caption. Title appear above the table, capitalized like a title, left, etc. If I can give you my email ID. If you have anybody among the participants have any table to be incorporated into the text,